Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute.
Hey, Jim Cucaruto, Outdoor Stewards of Conservation. Thanks for tuning in. We got a great episode for you, and we got Reece here from, where are you from, Reece?
I'm originally from East Texas, Lindale, Texas, small town. Grew up out there and, just been fishing my whole life, and now I'm plugged into the industry and excited to be here.
Yeah, we are at ICast in Orlando, Florida. Got tons of exhibitors here. You're with a company called
Evolution Outdoor. So we make products from freshwater to saltwater and all the accessories you're going to need to, just have a good time out there, enjoy the lake and the natural resources we have.
I tell you what, it's refreshing to have someone on that's a little bit younger than us, right, John? Just a little bit. But one of the cool things that, as we were walking and talking, that you said that you grew up fishing your whole life, but then you kind of, a lot of us do that, but you kind of stepped it up. You were on a high school fishing team and a college fishing team, and that's not something, I'm from the Northeast. We don't have that, really. So tell us a little bit about how you, first got into that and all the whole process there.
Yeah, so, I grew up fishing. Both sides of my family, my grandparents were living on the lake, and so it was just something that we always did. But I'm a very competitive person, and so I just wanted to be able to do something the best of my ability, and so, I enjoyed fishing as much as I did, and I saw that we had a high school team, ended up joining the high school team, and then just got ate up with it, really. It was all I thought about. I was just constantly, maybe, I was in class, probably shouldn't have been doing it, but I was looking at my iPad and I was looking at some fishing tips and all that kind of stuff. So just got plugged into it. And then, my junior year of high school, my partner and I were able to win the state championship in high school, and so ended up winning $20,000 in scholarship money, and that really just fueled my desire to do that even more. And then ended up getting recruited by Dallas Baptist University in Dallas, Texas, and it was just the coolest experience being able to travel the country, see all these awesome lakes, experience, not one lake fishes completely different than the next, and so it was just really cool to have a group of guys and travel with them and just experience all that. And it was a great time.
That's wild. And it's a lot bigger than people think it is, especially people from the Northeast where I'm at, where we don't really have it. So hundreds of teams, thousands of teams, or is it?
It's hundreds, and depending on what league you fish. So I fished Texas High School Bass Association in high school, and I think there had to have been like 1,500 teams.
Good Lord, Texas.
Just in Texas, and then since I was there, it's gotten massively bigger. I think every single year they had to create new divisions just to keep up with. Keeping the limited amount of boats on there that they could hold on a single lake at a time. And then that goes nationwide. In high school, there's, really the biggest one is Bassmaster. And they have their traveling high school series where they go and travel different states, and then they fish those. And that's just really been a big, it's been exploding. And it just, we've seen recently, and all the way up in the biggest stages of professional fishing now, that you're having kids that were fishing the high school ranks that have moved all the way up from college all the way into the pros, and so it's a really cool building block, and I'm glad to say I was a part of that.
This is a topic that's really excites me, because I grew up, as I said, I'm a hair older. When I came through school, kids commonly brought their fishing equipment or to school with them, and they fished after school, or not necessarily tournaments, but they had outdoor activities they did. I mean, at my school there were shotguns hanging in the rack of the truck, and now that just can't happen anymore. And all of that, they taught hunter ed in schools. You know, there were shooting sports in schools, and all that sort of disappeared over the last 20, 30 years, and now I think we're seeing a resurgence. I'm based in Kentucky and work for Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, which was the birthplace of NASP, the National Archery in the Schools program. So getting kids shooting bows in schools again. And I know there's some states have scholastic sporting clays they brought back in, or small bore rifle competitions. But really, one of the biggest things are these bass tournaments. Because it's a, like you said, it's a competition. High school sports are incredibly fun anyway, and exciting because there's, folks get into it. And just tell us a little bit about your experience of, do you sort of develop a following? Do people like, you have a support team or a cheering squad that's like there to root you on to win the tournament? Or?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's my parents were always there traveling with me, grandparents for sure. And then, the tournament leagues, they do a really good job at live streaming, making sure that that's out there for people that can't make those travels. Especially, as I moved into college, we were, being from Texas, we were all the way up in, Florida, all the way to California. So, I mean, we were all over. And so being able to get my parents that link and get them to watch all that was awesome.
And social media sort of changed that whole game, because now you never know what the next thing's going to be that's going to go viral. But whether it's a bass tournament or a small bore rifle competition or whatever, but there's instant access to these competitions that people. I mean, American citizens love competitions. They love to watch people compete against each other. So, I mean, I think that's a good thing. It's healthy. It gets people outside. And I'm glad to see there are more kids doing this. I'm not saying you're a kid, but I'm glad to see more young adults are doing this either in high school or at the college level too. And I can't think enough about that the recruitment aspect of getting folks started and kind of getting that spark fired with the competitive part of it. And it is a little different. But, fishing, recreationally fishing, and tournament fishing, as you know, they're two very different things. So, do you recreationally fish as well, or do you pretty much all your time is tournament fishing now? Because everybody's got a limitation on how many hours you can spend. So.
Yeah. Well, since I left college, I'm working full time now for Evolution Outdoor, and
sure.
Damn work gets in the way.
I know, it gets in the way of the fun.
Yeah. So I don't get to fish as much as I'd like to, but every chance I get, I do. I definitely, big plans for me. I want to get to the point where I can do those big, professional tournaments and work my way in there. And so that's why I decided to come into this industry, was just to be able to set myself up to grow into that position. But yes, every chance I do, I bass fish. I don't really, to me, I'm so competitive that every time I go out fishing, I'm like, okay, I got to teach myself something. I got to learn something different. So when I do get to that point that, I'm well-rounded enough so I can be thrown in different lakes and different states and be able to, adapt and make those decisions.
Yeah, very cool. And I'm blown away by the size of it. And, I'm always thinking about economics. So John and I talk about how participation leads to, more dollars, which leads to more conservation efforts. So you've got thousands of youth that are now, buying those licenses, buying a lot of rods, reels, lures, putting that motorboat fuel in so you're supporting conservation probably at a level that you're not even aware of. Not only your fishing licenses, but, rods, reels, lures people know about, but they don't know tackle boxes too support conservation. So tell us a little bit real quick about what you got here in front of us, and John and I will talk about how that actually tackle boxes support conservation.
Okay. So over here on the left, we've got our saltwater bag. This is really, we just designed this to be the ultimate tackle solution for saltwater. All the best materials, great bag. We've had a lot of success with that. And then new this year is this. This is our largemouth 3.0 backpack. I actually had a hand in developing this bag, gave my 2 cents on it, and I actually developed this bag as that kid that wants to go to the pond, just be able to take whatever he wants out there, organize it all. It's got a really unique patent pending design on the inside where you can choose your system, whether you're popping out some pockets to stick some soft plastics or accessories in there, or stick some trays inside as well. it's a really cool bag, and it's something I wish I had when I was younger.
That's very cool. So, John, is it 4% on tackle?
I think it's 3% on tackle boxes.
So,
Yeah.
a portion of every one of these tackle boxes that you purchase goes to support conservation. It gets funded through a system there that goes back to building boat ramps and stocking fish and maintaining clean habitats, putting in fish structures, all that cool stuff there. John, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some projects that you were involved with back in Kentucky, or.
Well, yeah, I mean, we depended heavily on excise tax to create fishing access, fishing opportunity, and fish stocks. I mean, all of our hatcheries were funded by excise tax, and we produced millions of fish a year to put back into the water. And as you know, some fish do well on their own, and as long as you provide good habitat, they survive. And we have other species that are really more put and take type fisheries, like for us in Kentucky, a trout, or we have a few native brook trout in the east, but our rainbow trout are all put and take, and so we from cradle to grave, we spend excise tax dollars growing those fish and getting them into waters, and we really target, in addition to our tailwaters and some of our cold water opportunities, our urban fisheries. So where folks who may not have an opportunity to get out or don't know how to fish the tailwaters of the Cumberland River, for example, they can go to a local lake in Louisville, for example, and we stock trout on a Tuesday, and Wednesday they're catching fish. It's very low barrier to entry. Matter of fact, we even haul rods and reels and gear over there that they can, or loaners they can use, and once again, another way, in addition to the high school tournament scene, to get people involved in fishing. And you got to get them started somewhere, and those excise tax dollars help us to do that. And on the tournament side, I mean, one of the biggest ramps I ever built was a 6-lane tournament ramp on Lake Barkley, or Kentucky Lake. And,
I probably use that ramp.
Yeah, I bet you have, and it's a nice one. Yeah. It's and during tournament season, it stays busy. There's a reason they need 6 lanes. If it was a 1-lane ramp, we wouldn't have the tournaments there, because you couldn't get the boats in the water. And but yeah, it's exciting to have a company here that produces taxable products that number one are really cool. I love this saltwater tackle box here, and the fact that you took your expertise as a high school angler, a competitive angler, and helped design this one here is also cool. I'm a little bit of a designer by passion anyway, and that's just who better to design the perfect tackle box than somebody who uses one. I won't say as a business or a professional, because sometimes amateur athletes they get that professional, they get hung up on that, but you probably got more experience than most people have in fishing for bass. So these are great.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just excited to be here and talk to y'all about this. I mean, what y'all do and the conservation side is really what makes all of it happen. Y'all are kind of the unsung heroes of our industry. What I get to do and go fish those lakes. I wouldn't be able to do that on the scale that I do that in those tournaments with the pressure that we're putting on those fish during those tournaments. If it wasn't for y'all conserving it, restocking and doing what y'all are doing, that wouldn't be able to have as a big of an impact as it does on the tournament side. So it all really just feeds into itself, and we have to, as a small industry in the outdoors, we have to stick up for each other and pick each other up, and it's great to see all that kind of stuff.
So from your experience as a tournament angler, and this is something that's come up in previous podcasts, is obviously there are right ways and wrong ways to do tournaments, and and like anything else, we live or die by doing things responsibly. Have you seen sort of an evolution in how fish are handled so that they get back safely into the water, over your time as a tournament angler? And,
yeah, for sure.
What do you tell us about your experience there?
So typically every major tournament that we fish, what they do is they've got these pontoon boats that they've had live release tanks on them, and so when we go and we weigh our fish in, they've got barrels full of water with some air fizzing in it, and then we've got mesh bags. We stick all our fish in those bags, and it's all about keeping them alive. That's the biggest important, and they will actually punish you in a way by cutting out some of your weight from the tournament, which can really affect whether you win or you lose. But that's that all that is great for the sport, because we're keeping the fish alive, and we're rebuilding that lake up so we can continue to do that.
Sure, and you want to catch them again for the next tournament.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Especially the bigger ones. So you don't want to be killing the big ones.
Yeah, let them grow.
So I know John and I talk a lot about, we've caught a lot of fish, but we like teaching new people how to fish too. Do you bring your friends out and see the reaction of them catching? It's nothing better than watching somebody catch their first fish,
Oh yeah. That was, I mean, to be honest, when I was choosing whether I was gonna, work in the industry, I was really debating on being a guide because I really enjoyed taking people out fishing and just, saying, okay, this is why, the fish is here. This is what they're eating right now. Let's rig this up. Let me show you how to rig it, and we'll cast it and point you in the right direction. And just seeing that all come together, and that, it's satisfying, and it's cool, to be able to do that. I really enjoy taking my girlfriend out fishing, and we go out in the lake, and she has a great time. She usually outfishes me. It's the problem.
I've found that women are better hunters and better anglers as a rule than men are. It's they're more patient, and my wife is both an avid hunter and angler, and she is. Well, I go to have fun. She's dead serious about it when she's out there. It's not a game to her. She wants to catch fish, and it's fun to watch.
Right.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, and going back to that, we're at ICast here, and a big discussion is always want to keep participation going in fishing, and they've got some pretty strong numbers, but they want to keep recruiting and really hold on to people they've got. They'll have somebody come in and might fish once, but you need to hold their hand and teach them a little bit more than just taking them and catching one fish and saying, okay, you're on your own. So we want to make sure if you're listening and you bring somebody with you, ask somebody to come with you, but not just one and done. Make a commitment out of it. Have different things. Try saltwater. Try freshwater. Try different species. Get out there and really. There's really not much better than being a friend or being a mentor, whatever you want to call it. But that experience you're going to get when they turn around and they have their first fish on the line and they put their first fish in their hands and release it. There's nothing better. So. We want to make sure you guys are doing that. And
a decade ago or more, Wildlife Management Institute helped to develop what we call the hunter adoption model for the hunting side. And what we found after some research is one and done is not enough, especially on the hunting side. It takes multiple trips, multiple visits. It takes a social support network. All that stuff has to come together to create a hunter. And we sort of didn't think that way about anglers because, it's much easier to I can take 10, 15, 20 kids at a time on a pond and get rods in their hands and get them catching fish. But that one shot doesn't create an angler. There's an angler adoption model, the same as hunters. They have to have, repeated experiences. They have to have good experiences. They have to have social support. And I think that that's one of the places where I think angling recruitment can move the needle some is not just a weekend fishing event. All the kids are on the bank with rods and reels, and then they all go home because they, as kids do these days, they go right back to their iPhones or iPads, and they'd rather catch a fish on the iPad than catch one in the water. But if they do it 4 or 5, 6, a dozen times, and all of a sudden they have a network of friends that are doing it, whether they're tournament fishing or just recreational fishermen, then they build that sort of camaraderie that gets them back out there. So.
Well, you set me up. You opened up a can of worms.
I know.
Because we're talking about electronics, and what are we all talking about nowadays, right? The front-facing sonar. So I don't know anything about it. I don't even know how to look at it. So talk a little bit about the evolution of electronics. I mean, you probably grew up with it, but it's new to a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So initially, I can't remember the release date of it, but Humminbird released side imaging, and that was revolutionary at the time. And you saw a lot of pros like Kevin Van Dam, one of the greatest ever, and so he really adapted that technology, and we've seen over and over again in professional bass fishing that new technology and the quickest anglers to adapt to that are the ones that are going to continue to emerge and grow in the sport. But for the first time, really in our industry, we've seen a technology that is wild. It's live. We have never had anything that's live. Everything's been projected from something in the past. And so now you're able to see in front of you. The way the transducer works is you have your trolling motor, you mount it on the trolling motor, and then wherever you turn your trolling motor, it shoots out a cone. And so it's not a very wide cone, but it will shoot a large distance. And so now most guys are running their transducer all the way out to 100 foot in front of them, which, you got a really good reel. You can probably cast maybe, 90 yards or 90 feet. And so you're able to see really what's out there. And then you can see the fish's behavior as they're swimming around. And so we're seeing a lot of new baits coming out at ICast that are actually geared towards the live scope.
So you actually see your lure on the scope.
Oh, you can see the fish swimming. You can throw your lure at the fish, and then you can watch how they're reacting to know, okay, that lure's not right. I need to keep it X amount of feet above their head in order for them to watch it.
Wow. So there's skill involved. It's not like you're just, oh, there's one, I'm going to catch it, right? Yeah, you got to still know how to.
That's the biggest misconception with forward-facing sonar. It's very polarizing. There's a lot of people that say it's the worst thing that ever happened to the outdoor industry, and in a way it is. But it's conservation and everything. We got to make sure that we're not allowing things to get too far technological, because at the end of the day, we're out there in nature, and it's all about enjoying the resource. And to a certain point, it could be detrimental, and in the tournament side, nobody really wants to see a guy just looking out at a screen the whole time. We want to see a guy, fishing, off instinct and stuff like that. And so there is an aspect of it, and we're kind of seeing in the professional tournament side that there's debate on whether we should be taking out some, regulating the amount of electronics now. And that really wasn't a major talking point in the past.
Great.
Right.
Always evolving.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Just my personal opinion, it's not really the role of the manufacturer or the angler to self-police and say, I shouldn't use this because it's too effective. Otherwise, we'd still be paddling around in dugout canoes, and not having 300 horsepower outboards on our, $90,000 bass boats. That's what state fish and wildlife agencies do, and I think they're starting to see, that they're, if there needs to be some restrictions on the use of this equipment, then that's their job. They put the regulations in place, or, they put the regulations in place to lower the creels, or the creel limits or size limits, or change the size limits to accommodate. And we've done that for, I worked for a state agency for 15 years, and that's what we do is adapt the regulations to protect the resource, but still allow the customers to have access to that resource. So, I think sometimes people kind of cast a side eye at the industry or the users, and it's like, well, you really shouldn't be using that. It's like, well, no, the agencies really need to adjust the regs. Now, the end user may not like that. If you got a 10 bass limit on a lake and it goes to a 3 bass limit, that's the price you pay for the technology that you're using. But so there's trade-offs. But yeah, I think sometimes it's the blame gets put on the manufacturer, the industry, or the user, when really it's the regulatory agency that should be controlling that. So, well, got a question then. What is for two questions? One is you mentioned your $20,000 scholarship. Is that the biggest purse you've ever won in a tournament, or have you? And what's the biggest one you've ever competed for? Because there's some real money in some of these tournaments.
I'd say that is definitely the biggest that I've won. In college, I did compete for a boat, and I fell short of the boat by like an ounce.
Oh,
and it was I'm still a little sad about it, but yeah.
So the second one, what's your favorite bass fishing technique? What kind of lure? Where do you like to catch? Where do you like to catch them?
I like to fish offshore, so I like to get away from the bank. I'm a younger guy. I'm adaptive to the technology. I like the live scope. I think it's a positive thing, because before, you weren't able to really, everything you were doing out on the water was, kind of a guess. It's trial, but now you can really, in the moment, see fish behavior, and it's just really a learning thing. We're learning now because of live scope things that we've never ever seen before, and so I really like to just go out there and really learn what makes a bass go. What I need to throw out there to make that fish want to eat.
Cool. Well, I'm a tech guy, and I got to check out one of these live scopes. But I grew up. I always liked I like a buzz bait on the top. I like watching a
Oh,
bass
Top
take something
water.
on-
Oh,
Oh,
man,
geez, that just
not much
yeah.
better.
it
than
makes
that.
my hair stand up on my neck to watch a bass hit something on top water because they're pretty much anything they can fit in their mouth they'll eat or try to
yeah.
eat, and they're sort of the velociraptor of the aquatic system.
Wild.
So
All right, Reece. Well, thanks for coming up here. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about where you can get information on this, and then also information on youth participation and tournaments, and maybe some tips on where you can find information on getting started fishing.
Okay. Yeah, you can look us up at evolutionoutdoor.com. This is where you'll find all of our hunting, fishing, and tactical gear. And then Salt by Evolution is where you can find these Evolution saltwater bags. Follow us on all social medias. I actually run the social media pages, and that'll be Evolution Outdoor. We'll be on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. A lot of videos that I do are really just showing you how to use the products. So if you're ever questioning if you need to buy our stuff, check it out for yourself on those platforms. It's a great way to understand those. And then I'm blanking on the other question.
Oh, no, Bassmaster. Where do you get information on getting
okay.
started fishing or youth tournaments? And
Yeah, just look up you can just search your state, high school fishing by your state. It's a great way to start, especially for the average person. Might not be able to go travel to all those states. But if you're really trying to step up to get to that point where you want to go, you have the dream of being a college angler or, and working your way up to pros. Definitely try out the Bassmaster series. I feel like they're the best series to do that. Just bassnation.com is a great place for that.
awesome. Well, folks, you heard it here. Support your manufacturers, buy their products, generates excise tax that pays for conservation, puts more fish in the water and game in the field. And thanks for listening. We'll see you in the field, in the woods, and on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.